Bruno Mars turned 39 in October 2024. On paper, that's just a number. In practice, it landed in the middle of the loudest stretch of rumor and speculation his career has ever produced. A $50 million gambling debt story that wouldn't die, years of silence about his relationship, and a comeback album that fans have been begging for since 2016. This year, on stage in Las Vegas, he finally said something about it. Not a tell-all, not a confession, a joke, delivered in front of thousands of people. That put years of speculation to rest in 11 words. This is the real story of how it got there. Bruno Mars, born Peter Jean Hernandez in Honolulu in 1985, grew up inside a family variety act. His father played percussion, and his mother sang and danced. And by the time Bruno was 4 years old, he was already part of the show, doing an Elvis impersonation that reportedly earned him the nickname Little Elvis around Waikiki. That stage time compounded fast. Local news coverage from Hawaii has long noted that he was performing regularly years before most kids start elementary school and doing double sets on some nights. That kind of early exposure builds two things at once: stagecraft and a strange relationship with normal childhood. His parents divorced when he was a preteen. The family act dissolved, and by his own account in later interviews, the years that followed were financially rough. He's talked in interviews over the years about periods of real instability, growing up in Hawaii before he left for Los Angeles as a teenager. He arrived in LA at 18 with almost nothing and spent his first years there doing what most aspiring artists do: cycling through cheap apartments, taking odd jobs, and getting rejected. Motown signed him briefly in the mid-2000s and dropped him without releasing a single song, a period he's described candidly in press interviews as demoralizing at the time. It also pushed him towards songwriting and production instead of just performing, which is where his career actually took off. Before Bruno Mars was a headlining name, he was one of the most in-demand songwriters in pop, working with Philip Lawrence and producer Ari Levine as the Smeezingtons. He co-wrote the hook for Flo Rida's Right Round and helped shape CeeLo Green's F***KU and B.O.B.'s Nothing on You, hits that were selling millions of downloads for other artists before his own debut EP came out in 2010. Once he stepped into the spotlight himself, the run was fast and unusually consistent. Doo-Wops and Hooligans, 2010, and Just the Way You Are launched him into the Billboard Hot 100's top tier almost immediately. Grenade followed, then Locked Out of Heaven in 2012, which made him the first solo male artist in decades to notch multiple #1 Hot 100 hits that early in a career. Unorthodox Jukebox pushed his sound into rock and reggae territory that his label reportedly wasn't fully on board with. A bet that paid off with a Grammy for Best Pop Vocal Album. Then came Uptown Funk with Mark Ronson in 2014, one of the biggest singles of the decade, followed by 24K Magic in 2016, a 9-track funk and R&B throwback album that swept album, record, and Song of the Year at the 2018 Grammys, making it just the second R&B album in that century to take all 3 top honors in a single night. Then, for years, a solo album didn't come. Instead of rushing another solo record, Mars spent the back half of the 2010s and early 2020s on side projects and collaborations. The biggest was Silk Sonic, his retro soul duo with Anderson .Paak. Leave the Door Open, 2021, went to #1, and won Record of the Year, Song of the Year, and Best R&B Performance of the Grammys. And the duos and evening with Silk Sonic became one of the best-selling vinyl debuts by an R&B act in decades. He also kept showing up on other people's records. His 2024 duet with Lady Gaga, Die With a Smile, became a massive global hit and a fixture at award shows, and his 2025 collaboration with Rose of Blackpink, ABD, turned into one of the biggest K-pop crossover duets in Billboard history. Both songs kept his name constantly in the conversation, even without a new Bruno Mars solo album. That absence, nearly a decade without a proper solo full-length after 24K Magic, is part of what made the gap feel so loud, and part of what fueled speculation about what was actually going on behind the scenes. The debt story has a clear, traceable origin. In March 2024, News Nation ran a report, sourced to an unnamed, well-placed Vegas insider, claiming Mars had accumulated roughly $50 million in gambling debt tied to his long-running Park MGM residency, and that the insider believed his casino earnings were effectively being used to pay it down. MGM Resorts responded within days with an on-the-record statement to outlets, including Variety and the New York Post, describing their relationship with Mars as long-standing and rooted in mutual respect, and stating plainly that he had no debt with the company. That denial was picked up widely, and MGM stock didn't move on the story, a sign that Wall Street wasn't treating the claim as material. But the story didn't disappear, because the number was just plausible enough to be sticky. Vegas high roller blackjack limits really can run into the tens of thousands per hand, and outlets covering the gambling industry have pointed out that a $50 million total over several years of play isn't mathematically far-fetched for a whale level better, which is part of why the rumor kept resurfacing even after the denial. Mars has never hidden that he enjoys gambling. He's referenced it in interviews going back years. What he's disputed is the size and framing of the debt claim, and specifically the idea that his residency was some kind of forced repayment arrangement. Additional unverified claims piled onto the original story over following 2 years. A report suggesting losses closer to $68 million between 2009 and 2024, and separately, sports commentator Shannon Sharpe saying he'd heard a secondhand claim about a single $17 million session. None of these secondary claims have been independently verified or confirmed by Mars, MGM, or any casino. For a long time, Mars mostly let the rumor sit, occasionally trolling it rather than addressing it head-on. In mid-2025, after a surprise appearance during a Rose/Blackpink stadium show, he posted a lighthearted line on Instagram about being almost out of debt, clearly playing off the story rather than confirming it. The real direct response came in April 2026, on opening night of his first solo arena tour in nearly a decade, the Romantic Tour, at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. During a Silk Sonic reunion moment with Anderson .Paak, Paak jokingly referenced being emotional about how much debt it took to get there. Mars picked up the bit and told the crowd, plainly, he was debt-free, and he'd paid casino off a long time ago. The crowd reportedly erupted, and clips of the exchange spread quickly online. That's the closest thing to a confirmation that exists, and it confirms the opposite of the viral rumor. It lines up exactly with what MGM said in writing 2 years earlier, no debt. The other major thread of speculation around Mars this year involves his 13-year relationship with model and actress Jessica Caban, who he met at a New York hotel restaurant in 2011. Caban moved from New York to Los Angeles to be with him not long after they started dating, and the two were together through most of his rise to global fame, appearing publicly together at the Grammys in 2014, 2016, and 2018. Mars has always kept the relationship largely private. He confirmed it publicly for the first time in a 2013 Rolling Stone profile, describing Caban as his best friend, and in his 2018 Grammy acceptance speech for Record of the Year, he thanked her directly from the stage. Starting in late 2024, entertainment outlets began reporting that the couple was spending significant time apart, including separate holidays, and sources described the relationship as strained. Neither Mars nor Caban has ever issued a public statement confirming a breakup, and as of mid-2026, they still follow each other on social media. But most entertainment reporting now treats the relationship as effectively over, generally dated to sometime in 2025, based on extended public silence and lack of any joint appearances since. It's worth being precise here. This is the media's read of the situation, not something either party has confirmed on the record. Whatever was happening privately, Mars channeled 2025 and early 2026 into music. He announced The Romantic, his first solo studio album since 24K Magic in 2016, releasing lead singles starting in January 2026 ahead of a February release. The album marked his return to a full solo project after nearly a decade spent on collaborations and the Silk Sonic project. The Romantic Tour followed in April 2026, his first arena/stadium solo tour since the 24K Magic World Tour wrapped in 2018, and by all accounts has been one of the hottest tickets of the year, opening to a packed Allegiant Stadium and drawing surprise guest appearances, including the Anderson .Paak reunion that produced his gambling debt comment. Strip away the speculation and what's left is fairly straightforward. A performer whose visible output, hit collaborations, a Silk Sonic album and tour, guest verses, arena residencies, never actually slowed down, even during the years without a new solo Bruno Mars record. A gambling story built on anonymous sourcing that both the casino and, eventually, Mars himself directly denied. A long relationship that appears to have quietly ended without either party ever making it official. And a comeback album and tour that landed at almost exactly the moment all of that speculation was peaking. None of that adds up to some hidden confession waiting to happen. What it adds up to is a 39-year-old artist who spent years being talked about more than he talked, and who, when he finally did address the loudest rumor directly, did it his way, on stage in a joke, in front of a stadium full of people who've been waiting 9 years for exactly that kind of night. News Nation's original March 2024 report and MGM Resort statement, as covered by NME, the New York Post, and Variety. Men's Journal and Music Times coverage of Mars's April 2026 onstage comments during the Romantic Tour opener. Gambling Harm, Org's contextual analysis of Las Vegas high roller betting limits. Rolling Stone's 2013 and 2016 profiles of Mars discussing his relationship with Jessica Caban. And Billboard, Grammy.com, and RIA data on his chart and award history. Where a claim could not be traced to an on-record statement or verified reporting, e.g., unconfirmed secondary debt figures, second-hand celebrity comments. It is flagged in the script above as unverified rather than stated as fact.